Oh, hello. What's this, you might be asking? Well, it's just my suicide pistol, because from this point on, it's going to be rather obvious that this show gets really depressing. Hello, insects of YouTube, it is Noise, and welcome to the next episode of Neon Genesis Evangelion. And today we're going to be talking about some weird episode that's title is way too long for me to even say, because you know the English translators and basically all the English people that worked on this are fucking retarded. Anyways, and they really are, because I was listening to the audio commentary on the DVDs, and they're just awful. They really don't get the show. They really don't. And that bugs the living fucking shit out of me. Anyways, hey look! My face is back. Now you get to look at my beautiful, fat, disgusting body. Okay, well that's fine. Now we don't need to just watch a picture all the time. Now you can at least watch me flail my arms around and watch my arm fat jiggle. That's wonderful, right? So anyways, let's just dive right into this episode and see what happens. Okay, so the opening scene of this, we have Ryutsuki and Gendo, right? We have Ryutsuki and Gendo in a helicopter, which is, at first it's kind of hilarious because they talk about where like the angels have destroyed shit and like created these craters, and then they fill them full of water and call them lakes. That was kind of funny, and Ryutsuki's like, oh, I kind of hope we don't have to do that anymore. However, what they're really talking about when they start getting into the crux of this is just how much trouble Gendo is in. Gendo is in a lot of trouble with Seele, and we kind of got a hint of that from the previous episode. However, on this one, we really get to see, or we hear about it, we don't see it, which is something that I actually like about this show, is that they talk about it. They don't show it, they talk about it. And I kind of like that. Might be one reason why I'm a huge fan of a lot of the Godzilla movies, where they talk about Godzilla a lot, but they don't show them. Even why I'm such a big fan of the 2014 movie. However, back to this topic here, Gendo is speaking, right? And he doesn't get why they're upset with him. And Ryutsuki's like, apparently the Human Instrumentality Project has fallen behind schedule. And Gendo rebuts, and he goes, well, they can't be behind schedule because all the pieces fit together. Now, that could be his pieces, because we know that Gendo is really working on his own agenda in this. That's been established beforehand, where he's writing his own script to the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is a bit of religious symbolism, but I really don't want to get into that. And because of this, his schedule is going just fine. His schedule has been kind of put out of place, and Gendo actually acknowledges that, which is something I believe is actually a character trait that is really great with Gendo. But at the same time, he's willing, it hasn't gone totally overboard. Now for Seele, on the other hand, Seele is like, fuck, we're really behind schedule, which, of course, they're nothing but a bunch of impatient old farts. And therefore they're going to get angry with Gendo, and to the extent of how much trouble Gendo is in, this is the episode where they really set up the fact that Gendo is in trouble. Well, I've already said that. Of course he's in trouble. This is the episode that really establishes just how much trouble he is in, because they're threatening to dismiss him. They're threatening to make him leave NERV. They're threatening to basically fire him. And of course Gendo's having none of it, which is kind of badass. At the beginning of this, we have zero idea what's going on with this, but But Ryutsuki is on it, and so is like Ritsuko, and so is Gendo. Of course Gendo is. But he mentions Rei, and Gendo doesn't answer. Gendo just stares forward, and Ryutsuki says, well, never mind. As if he knows that this is a very touchy subject. Now, of course, at the time, we have no idea what they're referring to as that. Is it meaning, is Rei okay, or did she get hurt somewhere in the previous episode? We don't know. And it's something of the mystery that comes up that is kind of explained a little bit later in this episode, and definitely in future episodes. But I will just say that we really discover at the end of this episode just how important Rei is to NERV itself. And that's because Rei, we ultimately discover at the end of this episode, is basically the soul of NERV. She's the one that basically is powering, if you look at it, the place, or it's the power to the Evas. Though it's not said in this episode, you can inference it. And we really learn here that Rei is a lot more than what she's letting on. Before we just think she's like this emotionless shell, this person who's just basically, she has no social skills whatsoever. Well, none of the characters in Evangelion have any social skills, but really Rei is the number one in this case. And then we now start to understand why. And this of course is why, is because we discover that she's the dummy plugs. That's what she is. She's that thing that makes the Evangelions kind of go berserk, I guess. By the way, this episode is called Lies and Silence. That's the Japanese title. I'm going to go with that, Lies and Silence, because that American title is fucking ridiculous. Okay, and then the scene that immediately follows after that is a really well done scene. And it has to do with Kaji, of course. And this episode very much so is a Kaji episode, believe it or not. Despite the fact that a lot of stuff happens to both Asuka and Misato here, I think this really is a Kaji episode. Because here we really get to see that Kaji just puts on this fake persona that he doesn't care, when in fact he really does. They kind of bring out the essence that he's really kind of go with the flow kind of dude who just bangs women and walks away, when really he's not. He's actually the complete opposite of that. He's actually very much, okay, this is what I have to do, this is how I'm going to do it. He's actually a very point A to point B individual. He's a very smart individual. He's actually very uptight when you look at it, and because he's curious and stuff like that. And of course he has his own agenda, just like everyone else in Evangelion. Which I just have to say this. You know how a lot of people say that all the characters in Evangelion are paranoid? They're not, because literally everyone is out to get you in Eva. Anyways, we discover here that Kaji is working for somebody else. Now, we were inferenced that in a couple of episodes previous, but now we really get it, and I think it's the JSDF, the Japanese Self-Defense Forces, that he's really after. And someone just messaged me something on Facebook, fuck Facebook. And we see from this point out just what he's trying to do. He's trying to figure everything out. He's basically spying for the JSDF. And we see him talking to this woman who has a bunch of cats, who has a lot of knowledge of NERV. A shit ton, a lot of knowledge for NERV. Now, is this meeting clearly was to take place on purpose, because she says it's me. And of course, Kaji goes, okay, now we don't know who this woman is, but we can we never find out who this woman is, but we can inference who she is, and I'm going to tell you who I think it is. And this is pretty much what's been embraced by the Eva community. In previous episodes, it is mentioned that Ritsuko is, and she's very much so a cat lady. We see all these cat models and stuff, and she even talks about cats on her desks. And she says that she left her cat with her grandmother. Now, this woman knows an awful lot about NERV. She's had contact with people in NERV. She has a lot of dirt on people in NERV. And she also has cats. And when we discover later the original hair color of Ritsuko and Ritsuko's mother, they match up with her. So I have no choice but to think, due to the law of deduction, that that's Ritsuko's grandmother. And that would also explain why she has all of this dirt. And why she has this is basically corporate espionage that's going on right here. Which, I never thought Eva would do this, but it's nice. It's actually an interesting little point. It makes Kaji a little more 3D. A lot of people mistake this episode to be, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but I don't see it as such, but a lot of people say that this is a Misato Asuka episode, when really I think it's a Kaji one. But here's here's an example of why people think it's an Asuka episode. Here we really get to see how attracted to Kaji Asuka really is. Now, we already know that Misato is, but this episode really establishes that she wants to literally be with Kaji. She literally has these feelings for Kaji, even though I don't think Asuka is capable of any possible feelings other than self-loathing. However, of course, she calls him. She's like, someone's touching me, and that whole shit makes me feel really awkward. It makes me go, oh, who would want to touch that? But anyways, and of course, her friend Hikari sets her up with a date, which is interesting. And Asuka takes it. I think it was because she actually secretly wants to get her mind off of Kaji, because Kaji used to give her a lot of attention. And of course, that's one of the major traits with Asuka, is that she always wants that attention. She always wants to feel loved. And that's why she often puts other people down to make herself feel better. And of course, she sees this opportunity. She's like, well, I guess somebody's going to pay attention to me, therefore, like, oh, complete selfish cunt, yes, but we've already established that horse shit. And it's also interesting because, with Kaji, on a previous episode, she was very risque with what she was wearing. I mean, she even showed him this two-piece, really skimpy, slutty swimsuit. And Kaji says, is that a little too old for you? And then when she goes out on a date with this dude who we never meet, when she comes home to see Shinji, she's wearing a very conservative-looking dress. A green dress. And, man, does that... It showed right there that she was going to agree to go on this date because she wanted the attention, because Kaji wasn't willing to give it to her at this point, but she's in love with Kaji. Kaji's the only one that she has her eyes on. She starts feeling a bit attracted towards Shinji, whether she wants to admit it or not, because of the kissing scene in this. And she initiates the kiss, by the way. Again. That she begins to feel attracted to Shinji, not because she actually literally feels attracted to Shinji, but because no one else is giving her attention. Literally no one else has given her attention. It's just been Kaji. Kaji is the only person that's actually, showed her shit, and I feel no sympathy for her. I do. I don't. I'm sorry, I don't. I hate her guts. And I'm not afraid to admit that I hate her guts. And this episode only makes me hate her more because of how stupid she acts. Also, they bring up the fact that a lot of people, that there's apparently been like a lot of weddings going on, and at the same time I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. And they actually say this in the episode too, which I give them props for. I like how they're able to state this shit and just kind of roll with it. Because there's a lot of people who are... The world's coming to an end. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's exactly what's happening. So a lot of people who are in love are getting married. And that's to be expected, and they say that's to be expected. In fact, they've said that they've been to so many weddings that they're actually getting annoyed. They're actually like, fuck, not another wedding. And that's what leads, one thing leads to another, and really the thing that leads to the huge moment in this is that wedding. And I thought that was an interesting note. I thought it was a very human note, because that's exactly what shit happens. I mean, look at right before World War II, a bunch of couples got married. Right after World War II, people got married because they don't want to be split again, and shit like that. So that was a very, I feel, an appropriate thing to do. And thus, we get the first of many important elevator scenes, because obviously, whoever wrote this given episode thinks that elevators are where most conversations happens, which is not, but whatever. And at least they're talking in this one, because as we know later on in Evangelion, they tend to focus on elevator scenes and nothing happens. Episode 22. Now, of course, the main characters state before that Shinji seems a little bit more downcast, and he's not really downcast, but he's nervous as all shit. Because apparently coming up, he's going with Gendo, which is actually my favorite scene in this episode, believe it or not. He's going with Gendo to see his mother's grave. And of course, in the elevator scene, that's what comes up. Shinji asks some, in my opinion, legit questions. And he's like, tomorrow I have that meeting with my father. You seem to be close with my father, Rei. What should I say to him? And Rei just goes, I don't know. I don't know. And you're wondering why, because beforehand, and Shinji brings this up too, so I like that Hideki Anno knew what the audience would be thinking. We saw her smile with Gendo, and in fact jokingly having a conversation with Gendo where they were both smiling and even laughing. And of course she leaves without giving Shinji any information whatsoever, leaving him on his own. However, the other bit of interesting conversation that brings up is this, which, why Shinji would bring this up, I don't know. Probably because his mother was literally the only other woman in his life for the longest time before Misato. But Rei, in the previous scene, we saw her wringing out a piece of wet cloth when she was cleaning some of the classroom. And Shinji says, "You look like a mother." Foreshadow, everybody. Major fucking foreshadow. And then Shinji says a line that a lot of people complain about, including the English voice actress of Asuka, which maybe want to smack her all the same, because apparently they're actually pretty close to the same people. Which, if that's any inclination of what the voice actress, Tiffany something, was like, I'd want to strangle her. However, she says, "Oh, that's a terrible compliment to give," because Shinji says to Rei, "You'd make a good housewife." In Japan, that's a very big compliment. In Japanese society, that is a very big compliment to say that to somebody. It is, and this is one reason why I can never watch these in English, or why I will never really say anything in a positive light about the English people who are involved with this stupid fucking dub. And that's because they didn't do their research. They didn't. They say they did, they're fucking lying. They don't understand this show. They don't. You can tell the voice actors don't. You can tell that the English writers had no idea what was going on. Have some pride in your own fucking work, people. Seriously. You may not like this show, but millions of other people do. One of my friends, Kaji Noir, he doesn't hate this show, but he has some major problems with it. And to be honest, they're legit. They really are. I'm not saying you need to like this show. I'm not. If you don't like this show, fine. Everyone else has their own experiences. I love this show. And I'm not too afraid to admit that I think this is one of the greatest shows ever created. But don't you dare go around telling people that this is a terrible show, and that they shouldn't like it. I've made the mistake of doing that with Superman, and I regret it. And I was an ass. And I'm not afraid to admit that I was an ass. And I apologize for saying that. Because if you like Superman, fine. Everyone has a different experience. I personally hate Superman, and I'm not afraid to say that. But I was wrong to say that you guys shouldn't watch Superman either. The English people of the show say that you shouldn't like Evangelion. That you really shouldn't like it at all. Arrogant bastards. How dare you? On to the review. Now here's some great bit of hidden rivalry between Misato and Asuka. Misato really doesn't care about it. You can tell Asuka does. Because Asuka's just sitting there eating potato chips like, you know, a normal 14-year-old boy, to be honest. However, she points out to Misato that she's wearing lavender-smelling perfume, which is cheap. And Misato goes, "Well, I've been to so much of these, I thought I'd try something new," and that she doesn't have any money. Probably mainly because she doesn't have any money. And that comes up later. And that's something that I like about Hideki Anno, is that a lot of stuff that he brings up is brought up later. And usually, and that's something that I like about him, is that he's extremely clever when it comes to when he brings little shit like this up. They usually all come back and usually bite us in the ass, but he brings them back up. Which is one reason why I think he's one of the kings of foreshadow. Yeah, I better let my dog out. Misato says an interesting line to Shinji, because Shinji's obviously worried about meeting his dad. And rightfully so, and I hate it when people complain about him saying, "Oh, just grow a pair of balls and talk to your dad." I don't know about you, but whenever I meet somebody, or meet somebody that I haven't seen for a very long time, I get unbelievably nervous. What if I say something wrong? What if I come on too strong? What if I do this? What if I do that? And that's exactly what Shinji's thinking, because all Shinji knows his dad is that really stern asshole who says leave, or tells him to go, essentially go fuck himself. And that's because Gendo really has never had or never been close with Shinji. The closest he's ever been is in NERV HQ, and he's usually up on a pedestal looking down at poor lowly Shinji. Misato says an interesting line about this and says you can't keep running away from your troubles. You need to face them. However, that's a little ironic considering what happens to Misato later on in the episode, isn't it? In fact, Misato even brings it up, saying, I tell Shinji not to run away. I shouldn't tell him what kind of guardian am I? I shouldn't tell him that. What kind of guardian am I? Because she's really been doing the same thing this entire time. Now, we'll get into that more when the scene comes up. And she tells Shinji to go see his father with his chin held high. And you know what? He actually kind of does that. Because at the end, when Gendo's walking away again, Shinji actually turns, trying to instigate a conversation and says, "It's good seeing you, Dad." Which is a really nice moment, believe it or not. And of course, Gendo doesn't realize this at the time, but at the same time, you feel bad for Gendo at this point too, which I actually give Hideaki Anno props for that, because he makes you feel bad for Gendo in this scene. And you ultimately do. And also it makes you want to, again, learn more about Gendo, which is why he's my favorite character. I love how Hideaki Anno spoofs weddings, because everybody knows, well, everybody who's a fan of Eva knows at the time that, well, he wasn't having a very good time with the lady at home. And so, I think he took out his anger with how bullshit weddings are in this episode, because it just brushes right through. It's like, oh, hey, look, we're at a wedding. Oh, no, never mind, now we're here. Oh, no, now we're here. Now we're singing karaoke. Okay, and of course, Kaji winds up showing up, and he's late, of course. That's Kaji style. Again, that has to go with the persona that he's presenting himself as. And he sits next to Misato, gives both Ritsuko and Misato a compliment, saying how beautiful they are. Typical Kaji. And then Misato starts scolding him, and I'm like, okay, that's typical Misato. But then she starts doing other things. She starts going like, oh, look, your tie's not straight. Fixes his tie for him. And, oh, you got a stubble. You should have shaved before you come here, and stuff like that. She starts talking like a nagging wife. She really is in love with Kaji, isn't she? In fact, that's the real crux of one of these parts. And of course, we know why Kaji's actually in such a hurry here, and that's because he's getting dirt on NERV for himself and probably for the JSDF. I think it's the JSDF. Please correct me if I'm wrong. And so with Misato doing that, in fact, I can tell he loves it when Misato's doing this to him, because he has this little half smile going on, and he looks a little bit embarrassed. Some great animation. And it's a nice little touch for Kaji, and it really shows that he likes this attention. Because despite the fact that he presents himself as a playboy, as somebody who's slept with a shit ton of girls, because let's face it, he has, there's only one Misato, and he's willing to do anything for her. And I don't think she realizes yet, but I think she's almost willing to do anything for him. And if the bad things didn't wind up happening as soon as they do, I would have really loved to see how their relationship blossomed. Man survives by forgetting these memories. What a haunting but true line said by Gendo. Him and Shinji are at his mother's grave, which is my favorite scene in this episode. And they're down, right? And Shinji says, it's been 3 years since we've been here, and I ran away the first time. Which to me shows a lot of progression in the fact that Shinji's actually staying there this time. One, because I think he's older, and two, because I think of the help of Misato and what she told him last night. I really do, and it's even a bit more sweet, though in a disturbing kind of way, that Gendo's actually acknowledging his son's existence, finally. They're actually beside each other. They're actually there together, in the same space, at the same time. I honestly believe this is the last time we see that. There's 2 times we see that. One is in one of the first episodes, in the elevator scene, and that ends quickly. And then there's this one. The rest of the series, they're never in the same space at the same time together. It really is sad, and it brings up the line at end of Evangelion with Gendo. It almost makes me cry. It's that powerful when he finally says this line, but we'll get into that later. But Gendo basically said, Shinji's upset because, of course, it's his mother's grave, and she's like, I can't even really remember what she looks like. And Gendo's like, of course, that men survive because they forget stuff like this. When really that's not what Gendo has. Gendo's tried to do it, but he's failed miserably. Because really what we're looking for here is Gendo is extremely lonely, and because Gendo is really the Yui, as we find out that Shinji's mother's name is in this, Yui Ikari is really the only love Gendo has ever had. And Shinji asked the question, do you have any pictures of her? And he says, no, I got rid of them all. More poetic than that, but he says, no, I've gotten rid of them all. And so now Shinji really has nothing to remember his mother for, which of course I think devastates Shinji, but because of what Misato said earlier in this episode, refuses to show it. Because Shinji's character should scream, he should be devastated by this. But because of what Misato told him, he's not going to show it. He's going to hold his head up. And of course, what's even sadder about this is Shinji found out about this from his teacher, that Gendo threw away everything. Not from Gendo, but from his teacher, his school teacher. And of course, Gendo's awesome jet comes flying down and picks him up and says, I'll be leaving. He leaves Shinji alone. Shindo. He leaves He leaves Shinji alone. And we see that Rei is in there with Gendo. Rei's in the jet as well. Or whatever the fuck you want to call that thing. I don't know, but it's awesome. And Shinji sees her and then quickly says, Father, it was good seeing and talking to you today. Now, I really wish, part of me really wishes is that Gendo says the line, I see, but it's very deadpan, very much in Gendo's character. But you know what I thought would have been a nice little progression is if Gendo looked, and he still says, I see, but before then he gives just this tiny, tiny, tiny little quiver of his lip, turns into a little smile. And of course that's not in here, but I thought that would have been a nice touch. Other than that, I love this scene, and it really establishes just how much of an emotionless bastard Gendo is. If you didn't get that before, you got it here in this scene. He leaves Shinji alone, and I think it's just because Shinji lives close by. And of course, Gendo goes all over the place, so I think it makes sense that he'd be picked up in one of these things, but Shinji lives pretty close by, so I think it makes sense. Now, of course, we discover here that Shinji plays the cello. Not very good, but he plays the cello. And he said he learned it through a lot of repetition, and he got taught when he was younger for a little bit. Now, that's something that is very true to intrinsic people, including myself, is that they pick up things like this, where they can just be by themselves and work. One of the things I picked up is writing. I write a lot. And I do mean a lot. Shinji picked up an instrument. A lot of intrinsic people pick up instruments because they can literally be alone and learn. That's what they do. So I think this makes a lot of sense for Shinji. And what's even interesting about the scene is after he gets done playing, Asuka claps for him and says, not bad. Actually giving Shinji a legit compliment. And of course she goes in about her day and how it's more boring than Shinji is, which is kind of stupid and kind of defeats the purpose. But she does give them a legit compliment, and judging by the voice actress who does Asuka in the Japanese version, she is legit. She does sound actually legit, like, wow, you're actually pretty good. Okay, so Ritsuko, Misato, and Kaji walk into a bar. I'm not joking, that's literally a scene. They walk into a bar. And Misato's clearly had a few drinks, and she's like, well, I gotta go use the restroom. And Kaji says jokingly, you're not ditching me now, are you? And she sticks her tongue out and smiles and walks away. And then Kaji, of course, looks very happy that she did this, as watching her as she walks away. And he looks like he's in love. And of course, the conversation with Ritsuko only reinforces that, and the events that happens after this only reinforces that. And here we actually start learning a lot about Kaji in terms of the fact that a lot of what he puts on is a persona. He admits that when he was in school, which I think is a very admirable trait, he admits that when he's in school, he was a brat. And he slept around a lot. But he openly says he's been changed because of the world around him, which makes a lot of sense, because he survived Second Impact, of course. And that while Misato was really hiding some of her problems, the main problem being that she was basically sleeping around because she wanted to feel love only when she needed it, making her really kind of feel empty ultimately because of it. He actually liked her, but Misato had her own agenda. And because she had her own agenda, Kaji says the interesting line where he says, that wasn't really sharing a life. It was just living together, playing house. What an interesting line. And that really describes a lot of problems today, doesn't it? And of course, Misato has changed since then, and Kaji knows Misato has changed because she's wearing high heels. Because Misato never used to wear high heels. In fact, when they're walking home together later, Misato takes off her high heels, and she's just walking in her stockings, which I'm sorry that she has to do that. That's almost as bad as walking in high heels. And don't ask. And of course, Kaji comforts her, and it's a really nice moment. Ritsuko knows what's up with Kaji. I can tell she does, one, by the tone of her voice, and two, because of the cat trinket that Kaji gives her. And she says, "What were you doing in Kyoto?" And he says, "No, I've been here this entire time." She's like, don't play dumb with me. I'm not dumb. Don't insult my intelligence. Meaning that she knows, and this is to me was the confirming moment that cat lady previous was her grandmother. Ritsuko knows that that Kaji's seen her. She says, "Don't play dumb with me. I know you've seen this person," and stuff like that. And this was the moment that confirmed it to me. Because, of course, later we discover that Ritsuko's relationship with her family is sketchy at best. And so it would make sense that she would kind of have a cold shoulder to it. And of course, as the night goes on, Misato drinks too much, which of course, when you drink too much, you tend to get drunk, and if you get overly drunk, you puke. And that's exactly what happens to Misato. She drinks so much she pukes, which means she's clearly going through some troubles. Probably brought on by Kaji. And thus we get probably the saddest meltdown in the history of anime. And at the same time, one of the most sweetest moments in the history of anime. Misato reveals to Kaji that she feels terrible for breaking up with him. Because she apparently lied to him saying that she fell in love with somebody else, and she admits to him finally that it's a lie. You can tell she's tipsy during the scene because Misato has not acted like this beforehand. She's been kind of down before, but she's never been this down before. You can see why here. And of course Kaji knew that was the truth. Because if anything, Kaji's really good at reading people. He doesn't like to show that to people, but he's good at it. And he knew that Misato was lying. But he went along with it because, well, to be honest, he was in love with her. Which I think is a nice thing, a nice moment for Kaji. And then Misato, of course, reveals that she was scared of Kaji because he reminded her a lot of her father, which can be interpreted in many different ways. That's a very Freudian concept. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychology, if you really look at it, believed that, like, children, and of course it's up for debate, but children often learn what they're attracted to by their parents. For girls, it's usually their dad. For boys, it's usually their mom. And of course, this is exactly... Hideki Anno openly admits that he's a Freudian, which I don't really agree with Freudian ideals, or some of them. But some of them are very true, but some of them I believe are really outdated. But of course Hideki Anno believes in Freud, and therefore this makes sense why she would be attracted to Kaji, because, well, personality reminds her of her dad, which that scares her, because in the previous episode she mentioned how much she was confused by her dad and the fact that she was saved by her dad. She hated her father and sided with her mother all the time, but then all of a sudden, during Second Impact, her father actually showed for the first time ever for her an act of kindness, an act of love, because he sacrifices himself to save her ass, which makes her unbelievably confused. In fact, if he didn't save her, then one, Misato would be dead, but let's say by some fucking miracle she survived. I think she would have been probably ultimately, unfortunately, as horrible as this sounds, a better person. Because she wouldn't have these conflicting opinions all the time in her mind. And of course, all these conflicting opinions are brought out by Kaji. And she admits that she finally admits, it's hinted at in a previous episode where she's promoted to Major, that same episode, but she finally admits to herself that the only reason why she joined NERV was, one, to run away from her father, to run away from her emotions, knowing that she'd be busy, and two, to take it all out in the angels. And she realizes that that can only last you so long, which is undisputably true. You can only run away from your problems for so long. I found this out, and hell, I'm still finding it out. In fact, this is something that people will experience throughout their entire life. People intend to run away from problems to avoid them, because they don't want to deal with them. But they always come up to you in the end, and that's exactly what's happening with Misato in this episode. And Kaji's right there with her. And I think the only reason why she's willing to reveal this to somebody is because she actually feels when you have something new with somebody, you tend to be more open with them. You tend to be, I feel like I can share this with you without you looking very condescending at me or feeling pity. And therefore she reveals it all to Kaji because, well, she feels that way. And believe it or not, call me a romantic, but a lot of relationships start off that way. Relationships at work, they tend to date their best friend. And yes, that's very deep, that's very personal. But it's true. And she feels that way with Kaji. She feels like this is the person I can talk to. This is the person I can speak to. This is the person that won't look at me in a horrible manner. And that's why she reveals all of this to me, because she finally feels loved. And of course, the moment is completely ruined by none other than Queen of the Bitches herself, Asuka Langlazorio. Because when she comes back, she acts all nice and tidy, and Shinji actually shows some legit concern for Misato because, well, Misato's kind of passed out. And he thanks Kaji legitly for bringing her home, and then Asuka shows him to the door, and the only reason why she did this was because she wanted to get close to Kaji and smell his jacket. And he smells like lavender. And thus, Asuka's world, as fucked up as it was, starts to fall apart. Asuka asks Shinji if he's ever kissed somebody before. Legit question 14-year-olds ask. And Shinji is like, no. And Asuka doesn't give... and Shinji asks, oh, how about you? And she doesn't give an answer, meaning, no, she probably hasn't either. And then she asks Shinji, hey, would you like to kiss? Just for the sake of it, because she's bored. And of course they do, rather awkwardly, and again, Asuka's the one who initiates it. In the dub, because I admit that I watched the dub too, and hated it, but I watched the dub. The dub, after they break the kiss, she gags and runs into the bathroom to wash her mouth out. However, the Japanese, the original language version, she actually doesn't gag, she just runs away, and there's a pause before she starts gargling her mouth, meaning that she liked it. And then, of course, we have the big reveal, but I've already talked about this, of Rei being more than just a girl. And then we have the big fucking reveal, and I like to say it as the big reveal. Misato follows Kaji down into Central Dogma, which of course is where that's the lowest level of NERV. And Kaji reveals to her what they've been hiding and actually shows her what they're hiding. And we get the most disturbing image of this being, blob thing, crucified on a red cross. Okay, well that's religious symbolism in a nutshell because of Jesus. Kaji reveals that it's Adam. It cannot be Adam. And of course, we find out what it really is in later episodes. 24. But it can't be Adam. And if you were smart about it, you would have caught on to that just like I did in the first time I watched it, because they show Adam as being this little tiny baby fetus thingy-majigger on one of the opening episodes. The first episode with Kaji, Asuka Strikes, we see that... Now, you could say that Adam has grown, but they made it this huge point that they shrank Adam down to the size of that little baby fetus so that he couldn't grow, and that they could experiment with him. So that can't be Adam. Clever writing, Hideki Anno. Clever. And then, of course, we see that that Lance of Longinus thing that they brought up in the previous episode has been stabbed into this thing, and we don't know why, but I'm pretty sure it's to keep it from growing anymore. So it can't be Adam. And of course, we discover later exactly what it is. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Stay tuned for the next one, and I'm Adam Noyce from Adam Noyce saying sayonara.